Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca from Starts at 60, Australia's coolest community of sassy over 60s. And today I've got Nick McDonald, the CEO of Prestige In-Home Care, one of Australia's leading in-home care companies. He's going to talk about the importance of providing highly tailored 24-hour care and offer some advice for people who've come to the realization that their loved ones might need some outside care in the home. It's an interesting topic, Nick, but before we get into the nitty-gritty, tell us a little bit about your story because it's pretty special and pretty family oriented. What prompted you to start Prestige?
Yeah, thanks, Beck. Um, yes, it is an interesting story, and one I get asked a lot. And if I sort of take a step back to the beginning, my father's a GP, and I always looked up to him and the work that he did. I'm one of five kids, and none of the others had an interest in health. So I thought, here's an opportunity to be the next, Dr. McDonald. And so I sort of embarked on following in his footsteps. Didn't quite get into medicine straight out of school, but I got into nursing. The plan was to do that for a little bit, transition into medicine, but I loved the nursing. And so I stuck with it. I ended up working in aged care a little bit while I studied, but I also loved the kids side. And so I specialized in pediatrics, did that for a little bit. And then I found myself in a business that delivered in-home nursing, primarily for older people, which I had always had that affinity for. And I was there for 6 years, and it was a great opportunity to learn a bit more about the in-home care side. I was able to study some business while I was there, but it definitely fueled a fire for me in terms of, maintaining people's independence at home. I hated the fact that so many people were being forced at that stage into a residential care or into a nursing home when they really didn't need to be. So, you know, at some point, my uncle and both my uncles worked with me to sort of look at an opportunity to start our own business. And so we started a business at that stage, really looking at filling the gap for people who wanted to stay at home and weren't eligible for any of the government support. You mentioned earlier about 24-hour care. We knew there were people that had that much kind of need, but no one was delivering that. So I guess being able to support people to stay at home was a massive driving force.
Yeah, wow. And you've since been on the journey with your mum as she's aged. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's been really interesting being on the other side of the fence, if you like. After working with probably thousands of families in really similar situations, I thought I was an expert. But when the emotions involved and it's your own loved one, I really felt like I was back to square one. My mum was diagnosed with dementia maybe 6 years ago, and she was only young. She was, I think, 67. And, it was a difficult journey to watch, but, I'm sure a lot of people have been through a similar situation with a loved one, a friend. It's a terrible kind of disease to have to walk through with somebody. But it was a bit of a blessing for me in some ways to be able to support her. In a business like mine, it's not often that you can kind of help your friends and family, but it was beautiful to be able to kind of deliver some support to her while we kept her at home. She's now in a residential aged care facility, but yeah, I think that if anything, that has just sort of made me redouble my efforts to make sure that there are excellent solutions out there for people that want to remain at home and have those sort of really sensitive needs.
Oh, I know my grandparents stayed at home all the way, and it was a blessing. So you understand everything from both angles, and that's pretty important as a care professional and as a son worried about his mum. What are the common concerns our community members might have about their loved ones' care, especially having watched COVID-19 and have everybody locked in and all the different changes going on in health standards? What issues should people be worried about right now?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to watch the impact of COVID-19 on care at home. I guess some of the kind of the specific COVID issues we've had are, am I going to catch it from my carer? Why aren't they wearing masks? From loved ones, it's like, oh, geez, how are we going to manage if we cancel the care for mum? Because that sort of isolation is one solution to making sure that, people are as protected as they can be, but it comes with its own suite of problems. I suppose some of the common things that we're hearing even now, but, along the journey for families are things like, well, surely we're going to have to, mum's going to have to go into a home at some stage. They're not aware that, of the volume of supports that can be delivered in someone's home. We've got a few families that have 24-hour nursing in their home. Well, you don't get that in a nursing home. There's one nurse for 50 people. So, you can probably get more care at home, but it's often the world's best kept secret. So, part of the challenge is making sure people are aware.
That's a very, very true thing. I think a lot of people don't understand this sector and the services available until they hit one of those horrible roadblocks that mean that they have to take action right now, and then they don't have all the contacts and the information they need. It's something we're very focused on trying to help people navigate. But on the topic of providing 24-hour care, what's it like from the children's or the next of kin's perspective when they realise they're no longer able to provide that support that their loved one needs themselves? And they need more? What does it feel like, and how do people go about exploring their needs then?
Yeah, it's a really difficult time. I think, loving children have a real passion for supporting their parents. It's one of the only, and I felt this myself, it's one of the only opportunities you get to repay your parents for all the care they've provided to you for the, 30, 40 years before that. And so I think there's a sense of obligation to support your parents when they need your help. And when you feel like you can no longer do it, there's an element of regret there, or that, you're letting someone down. But the flip side is that there's an element of relief that you can actually get the care that your loved one needs delivered by someone who's expert in delivering that care, not just kind of well-intentioned. And it also means that the son or daughter, or might be the partner, husband, wife, that they can revert back to their core role. Like, the amount of times I've heard a son or daughter say, it's been so lovely to be able to go back and visit mum and just be the daughter, not having to be the carer and the nurse and the everything else, to just be the daughter and build that relationship, I think is really important. So, I think balancing those two competing pressures is challenging. It's often compounded as well by, they talk about the sandwich generation, people who have caring responsibilities for their own children or maybe grandchildren, but still a caring responsibility for a parent or parents, and being torn. We've only got so much time. So I think making sure that the support is there, and if that means engaging an outside party, I think that's really critical. And knowing that it can be as much as as you want. As I said, 24-hour round-the-clock care, it's out there. We've got lots of clients that benefit from that, and people just need to be aware of their options.
And coming down from there, people can also have 4 hours or much smaller amounts. I know from my parents and my grandparents that the types of services you offer, they're accessed in chunks. You don't have to have 24-hour care either.
Absolutely. And starting early is kind of key. A lot of our clients, the first thing they will sort of accept they need help with is the cleaning. So having someone come in and do your cleaning, it doesn't seem to be as much as an obstacle or a hurdle for people to accept as if someone's coming in to help you with you cooking your meals, or even to help you get out of bed. So starting that sort of acceptance of care early is really critical to get people used to the fact that this is okay, and that as you age and as your care needs increase, we can just scale that up a bit, and it's not such a big, I guess, invasion of what was independence, that it's just a new normal.
I love the way you talk about it, bringing your relationship back to that level of son or daughter and parent. I know my dad was the primary reliable person for my grandma when she aged in home, and the beatings he took emotionally of being the guy who needed to be there every day for her. He just wanted to be there so much, but he was the person who brought her milk and the person who did every one of those jobs. And I remember when he finally got care and he sort of was able to sit back and have a chat and a cup of tea, and it was a big relief. I think a lot of people would be able to relate to that. It's a challenging time right now as we look at the lockdowns around the place, and people are looking at companies like yours and trying to understand how to navigate this landscape when they need care. How do you personalize it? How do you break it down for each individual?
Yeah, I think that ever since we started the business, it was all around making sure that people could have exactly what they needed. So, there's no one size fits all. That's just a myth in individuals. It's a myth in aged care. We wanted to make sure that we could deliver something bespoke and unique to every individual. So, I think a big part of that is around making sure that you have the right conversations up front, and that that we're clear with families on what we can do, what we can't do, what other services are out there that might be a good fit, and that we really dig deep in the beginning to work out who's going to be the right fit for you. Do you want someone, a staff member that's more mature, or someone that's younger, someone that's chatty, someone that's quiet? Do you want a male, a female? What's going to be the right fit for your loved one? And obviously matching the skill set so that that connection can be really solid between whoever's delivering the care and the client. And as I said, to just make sure that whatever it is that that particular individual needs governs what we deliver, rather than the other way around and giving a list of, here's the things we can do, you choose what you want. Sometimes people benefit from that because it helps structure a conversation, but at the end of the day, we're there to keep people independent at home, and whatever that might mean for them, that's what we're there for.
It's nice to hear that there's an ability to be that flexible. I think it really sounds like the prestige values sit there. Do you think that sets you apart from others? And talk to me more about the freedom of choice in this industry and how it's changed over the years, and what it means for people today.
Yeah, it's I think the industry is heading in a great space, for my own parents, and even, looking forward, hopefully it's a long time off for me, but I think we're definitely heading the right direction where, the services that are available and the way that the government's funding is distributed is pushing towards individuals having choice and control. A lot of the government funding now is under a consumer-directed care model, which means the consumer or the customer themselves can direct what services they get and when and so forth, which was really beautiful to see from our perspective, because that's what we set Prestige up for in the beginning. We wanted people to have choice and flexibility, and a lot of our clients fund their own care, so they're a customer just like any other industry where they can pick and choose exactly what they want. So I think that that's always been a really strong part of our ethos, and having lived through it, and seen firsthand, what the nuances are for each individual family, I think it's just critical that we continue to go down that path.
It's important also to talk about the gap that people often find in care before they get to a care package as well. There's a really long window where government funding doesn't kick in, and you might have a need if somebody has a fall or things like that. How does that work for you guys? You must play a pretty important role there.
Absolutely. And I think whilst we're heading the right direction, that's still one of, if not the biggest challenges, that, there's 100,000 people receiving government funded home care package. There's 100,000 people on the wait list. So, and the wait list on average is 12 months at the moment. And given people often wait till they're in a crisis to kind of have these conversations, you often can't afford to wait 12 months until someone will sort of deliver some care. So being able to tap into a provider like us who can deliver whatever care it is you need in that interim, and then as soon as your government funded package comes available, to just use that to offset some of the costs of the care, but continue with that client and carer relationship, that part's critical. And again, there's so much unknown in this industry. The amount of people I speak to who say, well, we didn't know you could do that. So to just be aware that, you can access a government funded package, and doing that sooner rather than later is a good thing, because you're going to have to wait. And in that interim, you can just choose to get whatever care you need to get you through that period of time.
Once you're in that system, it grows with you as you age, doesn't it? It's a pretty impressive system once you're inside it.
Absolutely. And, people are often getting different government funding if they're eligible, topping it up with their own.
Mm.
As you said, they might just need 1 or 2 hours a week initially, and that's enough. But then, as they age, that can scale up. So, it's all around keeping people at home and keeping them as independent, not necessarily doing things for them, but facilitating them doing those things themselves and maintaining that independence.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I once said to a real estate agent, I hope they take me out of my house in a box one day. It's
Well, it's really common. It's really common, and most people, if you ask them, that's their preference. They love their home and everything that goes with it. That it's a very special place for people.
Yeah, it sure is. So finishing up, what's the one piece of advice you'd give our audience about care, whether they're using it themselves, managing it for a loved one, or even just kind of don't want to think about it, but know it'll be there in the future as something they have to address with a parent or a loved one? Give me that advice.
Yeah, right. A couple of quick ones. I guess, firstly, start the conversation early. It's no point waiting until you're in the middle of a major crisis to start looking at what options are out there and who's in your local area. Some providers will service one particular geography, others have a lot bigger sort of area of coverage. So, start the conversation early, because it's really difficult at times to convince your parent that they actually need care. People, they hold on to their independence, as it is fair enough. They hang on with every amount of energy they've got. So it takes time to break that down. And as I said before, maybe you start with something that's a bit more palatable to them, and so that when they do get to that point, they're a bit more accepting. So start the conversation early. I guess use a reputable provider. There's so many entrants into the market these days that it's really important that people research and make sure they're choosing a provider that's got a proven track record and I guess has been doing this for quite a while.
That's what shines through when you talk to you during COVID and the training and the programs you've developed to bring hundreds of your staff up to the point on hygiene and standards. Tell us a little bit more about that, because we didn't touch on it earlier, and I'd love to point that out, because I think that's what got me going, wow, you must have had to manage a fair bit of change.
Absolutely. I think we were pretty lucky to get onto it really early. We've got some fantastic leaders in the business. We've got a really strong clinical element. And the reality is, a lot of the stuff we do to try and prevent COVID-19, and even, we're lucky we haven't had any clients or staff that have been positive yet. But even if we were, a lot of the management are things that we do every day anyway. We've got infection control procedures that our staff are trained in, that they follow. They've all had hand sanitizer and personal protective equipment, with them, for years and years. So a lot of the stuff is kind of business as usual for us. But, given the gravity of the situation, putting people back through, we couldn't do face-to-face training, but back through online training to refresh them around some of that infection control, how to use personal protective equipment if we are to care for someone who has COVID-19. There's the goggles and the gown and the gloves and the masks, all that stuff. It's not very useful if you're not using it properly. You've got to be able to put it on properly and then take it off and dispose of it properly. So there's been a stack of training around, all of that stuff. But as I said, some of it is kind of business as usual, which was really pleasing for me. But the other part's kind of communicating with the clients themselves, making sure they're aware. These are some of the myths out there. These are the facts. This is what we think is important to you. And just distilling that whole, breadth of information into a sort of little bite-sized chunks that are easy for people to digest. I think that's been great in terms of allaying anxieties of our clients themselves, because obviously they're in a really high risk cohort, and we've got to do everything we can to support them and look after them.
Yeah, and for everybody's benefit, you guys have quite a large operation. You've got hundreds of people across Sydney and Melbourne providing care and services to how many different households?
Yeah, probably 2,500 sort of at any given time. It's great, and it's great to, from starting, as just an idea and a passion and something that I believed in, to now having 5 offices and being down the Mornington Peninsula and Geelong and Sydney. Like it's humbling to see the growth, and it's rewarding to see, just how many more families you can impact.
Oh, it's beautiful. I hope people can better find you as well now. I think this is a sector that doesn't get talked about enough, and does an incredible job. And especially at times like this when people are so isolated, it makes a huge difference to have good carers that and know where they're coming from and know are trained well. So well done. Thanks so
Thank
much,
you.
Nick, for taking the time to talk to us about what's really important. To everyone watching, I hope you found this interview interesting. This is Nick McDonald from Prestige In-Home Care. And, we'll catch you next time here on Starts at 60, but thanks for joining us, Nick.
Thanks for having me.